Welcome to the Steroids Podcast with your host, Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Boom! Boom! Let's get started here. The Steroids Podcast is brought to you by Ultimate Guide to ROIDS, 109-page ebook by Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Now, for the first time in bodybuilding history, you have someone with no corporate interests and no obligation to please anyone, not walking on eggshells to not offend. Ultimate Guide to ROIDS gives you the information, the whole truth, not a full truth and a half truth, full truth. Ultimate Guide to ROIDS gives you the keys to the Lamborghini, gives you the information, and lets you decide what to do with it. It's a crime this information has been suppressed this long. Now let's get on with the podcast.
Welcome back to the Steroids Podcast. Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. All right. Yeah, so somebody was asking me recently about why I've seemed frustrated or something a bit in the last few episodes. And they were saying, well, who are you talking to? And, well, I'd just say there's a bit of frustration at the general attitude of the bodybuilding community. The kind of questions that I get from a lot of people are really just talking about, what kind of drugs to take. And they let me know either directly or indirectly that they don't want to do anything else really other than take drugs. And so, like, if I tell them, God forbid that, they're going to have to stay on a diet in order to reach their goal, or, they're going to have to do something difficult with their training, like not just go to the gym and just, try to feel good and have fun, but they're actually going to have to gain strength and be patient with that and add volume with heavy sets. And be strategic with their training. If God forbid I mention anything about that, it's like, they just don't want to have it. They basically they shut their ears or cover their ears, and or just like can't hear it. Like the only thing that can be heard is the talk about drugs, and so there's a bit of frustration, because if you're not willing to do those things, you won't have success with your bodybuilding. And I do want you to have success, and I feel personally invested in people's success. I want them to do good. That's important to me. And so when I try to help people, and then that attitude is presented about trying to not go through any kind of discipline, not go through any kind of pain and suffering in order to reach a goal or a higher purpose, and just trivializing the bodybuilding as well into just like, here's what I want to do. I want to take drugs. I want this result, and I'm not willing to do these other things. They may not come out directly and say that, but, if you talk to them for a while, they will let you know that. And, they certainly don't want to have any discipline and then be really expecting, big results. And, I could just tell you guys what you want to hear. I could just say, oh, when you guys send questions or when you call in or whatever, if, I could be like everybody else and just say what you want to hear and be like, oh yeah, it's great. Or maybe if I was only worried about like producing content that you liked, but it's more than that. I do want to produce content that you guys like, but that's not my biggest goal at all, to produce content that you like. You guys like the content like as a side effect of me just like talking. But my main content is to put my main goal with the content is to put the right stuff out there. And it's more of like a take it or leave it thing is like, I'm going to say the right stuff no matter what. And if people don't like it, then they can take it or leave it. That's more of like my attitude rather than I want to make content that you like. Although I do enjoy making content that you like, but that's not the top factor, being popular or something, that's not a big factor for me in making the content. So yeah, that guy was asking, if there was a bit of frustration or something, and yeah, sometimes there is, and it's just the overall way that things are approached by gym rats. And, it may be a sign of cultural decay or something, people wanting results without discipline, wanting results without having to put in work over time, paying their dues. And just, I've been there, done that with the bodybuilding thing. And, it can be tiresome to hear the same thing over and over again when you want people to have good results. And sometimes I guess that frustration can kind of show in my responses. But anyways, I'm not, it's nothing personal. It's nothing personal. And I think that's the way that I talk in the podcast too, is that it isn't directed at any one person, but it's kind of directed at the general group bodybuilding psychology of the way that I know people are thinking. And anyways, yeah, I mean, everything that I've said, I stand behind everything that I've said. It's all been true. And of course, I do understand, you guys have listened to the podcast. I do understand, the bodybuilder's mindset. And, bodybuilders really need tough love, bodybuilders, gym people, it's the circus. They're not normal people. Many of them have psychological disorders, mood disorders, inferiority complexes, etc. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. So, I guess I come at things in a way that is much different than, the average content. But yeah, I'm going to continue doing it the way I've been doing it. But we'll see how this episode goes. So I wanted to talk about one thing, is that when people are talking about, or when I go to the gym and I see people trying to build muscle, one thing that I see a lot is people going quick on the negative. And this is more on the bench press than any other exercise, but it's on all the exercises. So imagine a guy bench pressing. And what I'll see is guys going really quick on the negative and kind of like dropping the bar, or maybe not dropping the bar, but just letting it descend really fast and maybe like bounce on their chest a little bit, or like a big stretch reflex on their chest. And then they'll be going up really slowly, pushing up slowly. So it's like they kind of are, their goal, you can see that their goal on each rep is really to get one more positive contraction, to get it up one more time. That's the big goal. And they're willing to sacrifice the negative, sacrifice the stretch to be able to get it up one more time. And I wanted to say that doing that is actually completely contradictory to your goals, because in bodybuilding, it's stretching the muscles under tension. So stretching the muscles with resistance is what gives the vast majority of the stimulus for muscle growth and muscle building. It's where the micro tears in the muscle fibers occur, and the micro tears are what make the muscle grow in the recovery period. And so when I see that, when people are, going fast on the negative part, fast on the stretch on the bench press, and then slow on the positive, or the part where they push it back up, it's the exact opposite of what their goal is with building muscle. They're shortchanging themselves. And that's the thing with bodybuilding, is that whenever you cheat with any kind of exercise, with any kind of program, any kind of eating, whatever, you're shortchanging your own goals. No one's being shortchanged except yourself. So there's really no reason not to change it. And so what it should be, the goal, should be to get one more negative. And, it shouldn't be to get one more positive or to push it up one more time. The only reason really that you want to get it up one more time is so that you can resist the negative and let it stretch under control and tension again, because that's the part that builds the muscle. Like if you're going to pause at any one part on the exercise, don't pause on the part where the muscle is shortened and you've pushed it up. Like if you're going to pause on the bench press, don't pause in the position where the bar is, pushed up in front of you. Pause when it's on your chest. Pause when it's in the stretch position. That's where the muscle generates the most force, and that's where the muscle growth occurs the most. Actually, for guys that have a lagging chest, for example, doing pause bench presses is one of the very most effective techniques in order to bring up that lagging chest, is to pause 1 or 2 seconds on the chest with the bar each rep. Definitely not pausing in the contracted, extended position, which is actually something that people are trying to do, like just what's happening there? Why are they pausing at the top rather than in stretch? Well, they're trying to reduce the intensity. They're trying to reduce the intensity of the exercise they're doing. So in addition to, not getting another stretch where they actually, break down muscle fiber and grow muscle, they're also, intentionally reducing their intensity by trying to get like a rester in or something like that at the top where it's like not straining them as much. But, muscle building, bodybuilding is a high intensity activity. The more muscle you're going to grow is the higher intensity, the harder the exercise is. Not cheating by doing things to try and make the exercise not as hard. Like pausing at the top, actually you want the muscle to never be off tension. So again, like if you're going to pause in the stretch position, do not pause at the top, because you want to be increasing the intensity, making the exercise harder, not making it easier, taking the intensity away if you want to build muscle. When you do any of those things, you're building less muscle, and it's a conscious choice that you're making. You want to reduce the intensity, you're building less muscle. You want to, go fast on the way down so that you can get another rep pushed up for some reason. Well, you just shortchanged yourself. The most important rep, the hardest one that would have been stretching it, when you were close to failure. But instead you wanted to push it up for probably ego reasons. And so you actually almost skipped that part and, did something like bouncing it on your chest or, kind of like letting it drop down, not under total control, and then kind of like catching it on your chest or something like that. If you would change that, it would help you to make a lot more progress. And the general mindset is that the negative of each rep is the important part. You're not trying to get one more press it up one more time. You're trying to get one more stretch down. Let it stretch down one more time. Let it get one more negative. So changing that thinking to the exact opposite of what I see most people in the gym doing. Okay, now, so to the title of this podcast, the subject, Insulin, the Lord of the Rings. So this is a very controversial subject, and before I start talking about it, the first thing I want to say is that the mainstream gym advice is what everybody in the gym is following. Okay, so are most people that go to the gym big? Are most people that go to the gym strong? Are most people that go to the gym ripped? The answer is no to all of those questions. So since the most people are following the mainstream advice about how to get big, how to get strong, how to get ripped, and most people at the gym do not have those results. And then the same thing with that, most people that are on steroids and going to the gym don't have those results. that shows that the mainstream advice that everyone's hearing, that everyone's repeating, that you hear everybody parroting, everybody says it everywhere you go, and it's like, oh, well, this must be the way it is because this is what so many different people are saying. Well, the results are right in front of you, every of those mainstream things, those things that are the acceptable things to say. Every time you go to the gym, the physiques you see there, the performances you see there are illustrative of the results of that mainstream advice. The mainstream advice about how to take steroids, the mainstream advice about how to eat your diet, the mainstream advice about how to train. It's right there in front of your face every time you go to the gym. And does it look to you like most people that go to the gym are just like fucking ripped and fucking strong as hell and fucking muscular as fuck? I mean, no. So this information has completely failed the lifting world. It is completely wrong. That's a very probably shocking statement for most of you, because probably most of you think, well, I'm just not doing it hard enough. I'm just not doing it hard enough. But no, that's not it. It's that the advice, the information that is the mainstream about bodybuilding is wrong. It's all wrong. It's all bad. It's all false. It's all leading you astray. You're trusting people. And humans have a weakness in their cognition or their mental abilities. It's part of human psychology that if they see other humans say things over and over again, and it's said from many different sources, even if the information is not true, the human takes it as a truth because of the repetition. And this has been studied in psychology, so it's actually, this is a weakness of the human psyche. And this is what's happening here. This is why you keep on doing this advice that's given to you about how to do things with bodybuilding, and it just keeps on not working. But you be like, well, that's what everybody's saying. And everywhere I go, it's the same thing said. So it must be true, even though it doesn't work for me. And it doesn't work for basically anyone that I see in the gym. It might work for like less than 1 out of 100 people. but it must be true because everyone's saying it. So again, I just want to say that the mainstream advice about bodybuilding, about fitness, has completely failed the gym community. And it's not right. None of it is right. It's all wrong. And, you could say that, you can wonder, is it intentionally wrong or not? Well, I think a lot of people, because of that psychological weakness, they repeat things that they hear, and that is the mainstream advice, and they repeat it as true, and so it kind of grows on itself, and they're not intentionally deceiving you. But the origins of a lot of this advice was probably intentional deceit. So the one thing, insulin, the Lord of the Rings, what do I mean by this? Well, I mean that it's the master hormone. Every hormone that you use in bodybuilding is dependent or feeds into insulin. What does insulin do? Insulin is the storage hormone in the body. The pancreas creates it. When you eat food, your pancreas releases insulin in order to make the food from your blood go into the cells, okay? So, food that you eat, calories that you eat, either will or will not be absorbed as a response to the hormone insulin, okay? So what we can first do is we can look at type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is a genetic lack of the ability to produce insulin. And so before insulin was a pharmaceutical grade product, what did a diabetic person look like? Well, they looked like an anorexic person, and they would die at a young age because no matter how much they ate, no matter how many calories went into their system, that person could not gain weight. they could not hang on to the food. They could not hang on to the calories. So even though they were taking in thousands more calories than they were burning per day, that food was not being absorbed by the cells, and therefore they were anorexic, and they would continually lose weight until they died, while they were eating more calories than they burned every single day. They would continually lose weight until they died. And then pharmacological insulin was invented, and we were able to stop type 1 diabetes from being an immediate death sentence and give people insulin. And now the calories that they ate would actually stay in their body instead of just not absorbing. So type 1 diabetes breaks the law. The law. Oh, the law of thermodynamics that you hear so much about. Calories in, calories out. And there is nothing more to it. And if you say there is more to it, that's blasphemy. That's blasphemy. Do you deny God? Do you deny science? This is probably the most controversial statement I've ever made on the podcast, is that calories in, calories out is not what determines weight gain and weight loss. But it's not. You know, you've heard it said so many times that you probably think, well, it has to be true. But it's not the way it is. Insulin is what determines weight gain or weight loss. Here's another example. There have been studies, and you can look this up, on diabetics, again, which they're the great example to show what insulin does because they're insulin dependent. And so they would be put on 2,500 calories per day. And then they would be injected, different groups on the same amount of calories would be injected with different doses of insulin. And the weight gain that they would have from the same amount of calories was directly dependent on the dosage of insulin that they gained. With each, they're injected with each increment of insulin, more, the people eating the same amount of calories per day gained more weight depending on how much insulin they were taking. And not just like, oh, well, one guy's taking a lot, one guy's taking a little. It was so sensitive to how much insulin that they're taking that each increment of insulin that was taken caused more weight gain on the same amount of calories eaten. So again, we have what? They broke the law of thermodynamics. Do you deny science? Do you deny God? Okay. No, actually, this is science. And you can go look it up right now. You can go look it up right now for you guys that are obsessed with this stuff. If this is just too unbelievable to you. If this is just too unbelievable to you, you can go look it up because this shit's on Google. Okay, so if you feed people the same amount of calories, they will gain different amounts of weight depending on the dosage of insulin that you inject them with. If you have people with no insulin, you can feed them an infinite amount of calories and they will lose weight no matter what is fed to them and dwindle away and die if they have no insulin. Okay, so insulin is what makes you gain weight or not gain weight. The amount of insulin that your body produces or does not produce. The sensitivity of your cells to insulin or the insensitivity of your cells to insulin. These are the factors that cause weight gain and weight loss. So there are certain factors that will make a person produce more or less insulin. Okay, of course we have it pharmacologically. And why do big bodybuilders take insulin? Well, they take insulin because it makes them bigger. And why does it make them bigger? Because it makes them gain weight on the same amount of calories that they're eating before that didn't make them gain weight. If you talk to bodybuilders that use insulin, and they're honest bodybuilders that will talk to you about PEDs, that's what they will tell you. That's the reason why they use insulin. It makes them be able to gain weight on the same amount of food, so they don't have to eat so much. Instead of eating 7,000 calories per day every day in order to gain weight, they only have to eat 5,000 calories every day to gain weight. And when they max out the calories and they couldn't get bigger anymore, maybe the total max they could ever eat was 7,000 calories per day. Well, now they add the insulin, and now they can get bigger than they could if they didn't take insulin and were eating 7,000 calories per day, okay? So that's pharmacological insulin. But what about, so now let's talk about insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance, okay? So if a person is very sensitive to insulin, then their body is not going to need to produce a lot of insulin to get an effect. So that means that their total body insulin levels are not going to be super high. So when this person eats, they're so sensitive to the insulin that small amounts of insulin being released from their pancreas is going to be enough to remove the energy from their bloodstream and get it into their cells. Whereas somebody that is insulin resistant, someone who is not sensitive to insulin, in order to remove the energy from their bloodstream and get it into the cells, their body, their pancreas, is going to have to release an enormous amount of insulin to overcome that insensitivity or that resistance to insulin. And remember how we talked about the dosage of insulin that is used in a diabetic or in a bodybuilder when it's used pharmacologically is what determines how much weight they gain on a certain amount of calories, okay? So if a insulin resistant person, an insulin insensitive person, is eating a certain amount of calories, well, they are going to have a lot more insulin in their blood, a lot higher dose, a lot higher amount of insulin in their blood to overcome that resistance, to get the energy out of their blood into the cells than someone who is insulin sensitive. Eating the same amount of calories their body is going to have to release less insulin in order to get that nutrition out of the bloodstream into the cells. So one person has more insulin in their blood than another person, and they're eating the same amount of calories. Well, since we know that insulin is what causes weight gain and weight loss, and the dosage does it in an incremental manner, who's going to be fatter? Who's going to be heavier? Who's going to have more weight? It's going to be the person who's insulin insensitive, because their body has to overcome that insensitivity, overcome that resistance in order to get the nutrition into the cells. So they have to produce a large amount of insulin, and insulin dosage is what causes weight gain. Okay, so that's, if you are having a really hard time losing fat and you've been really into this calorie model, man, really into this calorie model, and you believe it, you believe it's calories in, calories out, and that's all there is to it. Well, this is why, man, because you've got high insulin. Okay, and the insulin is what's determining whether you gain weight or whether you lose weight, irrespective of how many calories are coming into your system, okay? As is shown with diabetes, as is shown in scientific experiments with insulin being injected into people in varying doses, okay? And I know that I'm going to have a bunch of people, saying, no, because you've heard this over and over again. And so that's what you believe, and you'll never believe anything else. But it's not true. And again, at the beginning of this podcast, I told you that I was going to tell you the truth. I've told you the truth about all things bodybuilding, okay? And that all this information that you've heard from the beginning of bodybuilding is wrong. And that everybody should, in the gym, following the best advice, the mainstream advice, they should all be ripped, they should all be strong, and they should all have big muscles because they've been following the mainstream advice. And if the average gym is the average example of the effects of the mainstream advice. Well, the mainstream advice is obviously bullshit. So that's why you guys come to this podcast and then you do what it says to do. And then you all make crazy gains. And, I get pictures sent from guys all the time. Total freaks. Learned everything from this shit. And, so just here to help. I wanted to read a few things, okay? Let's go to Wikipedia. I'm going to read lipolysis definition from Wikipedia, okay? Lipolysis is the chemical name of fat burning. So let's read the first thing that Wikipedia says. Lipolysis is the metabolic pathway through which lipid triglycerides, fat, are hydrolyzed into free fatty acids. It's used to mobilize stored energy during fasting or exercise. The most important regulatory hormone in lipolysis is insulin. Lipolysis can only occur when insulin action falls to low levels as occurs during fasting. So right there from Wikipedia, we hear that the most important hormone in fat burning is insulin, and that fat burning, lipolysis, can only occur when insulin action falls to low levels. So that means if you are a person who is low sensitivity to insulin, you're resistant to insulin, you're not sensitive to insulin, and your body is having to produce large amounts of insulin in order to get the food energy from your food out of your bloodstream into your cells. Well, lipolysis, fat burning in you, cannot occur because, as Wikipedia says, lipolysis can only occur when insulin action falls to low levels. And you don't have low levels, bro. You have what's called metabolic syndrome or hyperinsulinemia, which is where your insulin levels are always high. And so when you go into your calorie deficit, instead of your body grabbing that deficit of calories from the fat cells and then putting them out into the blood, your body can't do that. Those fat cells are locked. They're locked because you have chronically high insulin levels. Hyperinsulinemia. They're locked and the key has been fucking thrown away until you fix your insulin resistance. Okay? Your insulin insensitivity. Until that happens and you get your insulin levels low, your body will not be able to unlock those fat cells and start lipolysis, because lipolysis can only occur when insulin action falls to low levels, as occurs during fasting. Okay, so instead, what's happening for you guys that, are saying, well, I'm doing a calorie deficit, but I'm not able to lose fat. Well, what's happening to you is that since your fat cells are locked, your body is reacting to that calorie deficit that you're making, that energy deficit that you're making, by shutting down. Okay, because it can't fill that energy deficit through getting the energy from your fat cells. And it can't just die. So what does it do? Well, it starts lowering your body temperature. It starts making you want to sit down on the couch all the time. It starts making you not want to do activity. You stop moving. You stop doing basically everything. And you just become sedentary. And eventually, after enough pain doing that, and just, total suffering, you give up. Because that's the way it goes. If you're prolonged stress, you can't do it forever. Maybe you could do it for 2 months. Maybe you could do it for 3 months. Maybe you could do it for even 6 months. But can you do it for years? No. And that's why you're always going to have problems with weight loss, with weight rebound, etc. And why, the calories in, calories out model has completely failed you. And when you look at the gym, everybody's bodies in the gym, this is the mainstream advice, this model has also completely failed them. Okay, so that let's look at another Wikipedia article, okay? So this one is the definition of adipose tissue, fat tissue, okay? And let's go to, it says, Physiology of Fat Tissue. And it says, there is a constant flux of free fatty acids entering and leaving adipose tissue. The net direction of this flux is controlled by insulin. If insulin is elevated, then there is a net inward flux of free fatty acids, and only when insulin is low can free fatty acids leave adipose tissue. Insulin secretion is stimulated by high blood sugar, which results from consuming carbohydrates. Okay. So again, we're shown that insulin is what controls whether fat can leave the fat cells or not. That's what Wikipedia says. And what causes insulin release? Consuming carbohydrates. Now, consuming protein also causes insulin release, but carbohydrates are really the biggie. They're the big boy. And they're the ones that cause the most resistance or insensitivity. Because the more insulin is released in your blood, your body responds to insulin the way that it responds to recreational drugs. And so when you have a lot of insulin in your blood, your insulin receptors become desensitized. And what produces a lot of insulin? Well, carbohydrates. So if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, you're eating carbohydrates at every meal, you're constantly stimulating insulin. Well, as Wikipedia says, if insulin is elevated, then there is a net inward influx of free fatty acids, and only when insulin is low can free fatty acids leave fat tissue, okay? So if you're constantly eating, and then it says insulin secretion is stimulated by high blood sugar, which results from consuming carbohydrates. So if you're constantly consuming carbohydrates through the day, all your meals have carbohydrates, you're constantly producing insulin, and you're probably not sensitive to insulin because of that, if you're the average guy. And so you've got hyperinsulinemia. You've always got high insulin levels. And because you always have high insulin levels, you can never burn fat. Your fat cells are locked. And if you create an energy deficit, that energy will not be coming from your fat cells. That energy will be coming by your body shutting down in order to meet that fact that there is not as much energy coming in now. You cannot grab energy from fat cells. And so your body has to make do somehow in order to make do with the decreased amount of energy coming in. So it starts shutting itself down. Okay? It's not the carbohydrates and the insulin that you're consuming are locking your fat cells so that when you create these energy deficits, they're not, the deficit of energy is not being replaced by free fatty acids from fat cells. The deficit of energy is being compensated by your body shutting down and reducing its energy expenditure, which is why you've had such big problems following this advice for so long. And when you go to the gym and you look around, everyone else has had such big problems following this advice for so long, and it's failed everyone. Okay, so as is everything with bodybuilding, hormones are what control your results. You've been lied to as normal. You've been lied to about how to build muscle. You've been lied to that testosterone is not an important factor in being able to build muscle, that anabolic steroids are needed to build big muscles. You've been lied to that calories are what cause weight gain and weight loss, when it's hormones, as always, with everything in bodybuilding, with everything in body composition. It is hormones that controls your results. Weight gain and weight loss are controlled by the hormone insulin, and you've been lied to. Okay, so now, I'm thinking, should I leave it off on that? Should I leave it off on that for today, okay? Because that was a lot of information to take in. That was very complicated stuff. And it's going to be a big shock to a lot of you. You know, that was a big, big shock of information. So let's leave it at that today, okay? You guys like this episode? You want to hear more truth about this shit? You want to hear more details about this shit? Well, send me the questions. Send me your questions. steroidspodcast@gmail.com. And let's get another episode up. Let's build on this, okay, guys? Let's build on this. Because I'm all about this. I want to see you meet your goals. I want to see you be fucking successful. I want to see you make your dreams come true. All right? I want you to have the correct information. I hate it that there's all these lies out there making you somebody who is really dedicated and really wants results and is passionate about achieving, about building, about discipline, about doing what's necessary no matter what. Following these harmful, bad, wrong, lying instructions and not being able to achieve your goals. I want you to have success. I want to see you kill it. You guys that have the discipline, you guys that want to try hard as fuck, you want to do whatever is necessary, I want you to have the right information. I want you to have the information to kick ass, to fucking take your goals and grab the bull by the horns. All right. So let's get on with the first question for today. The red one asks, "Hey Dan, I am 177 centimeters, 5'9". I'm a natural lifter with decent genetics. I've been lifting for 7 years now. I want to hop on my first cycle. All my life I was insecure as a fat guy. I lost weight and packed on some mass. Now I'm insecure about my height. I know I can change a lot of things, but not my height. Every day I compare myself with others and feel insecure if anyone is taller. I want to keep my mind right before hopping on cycle. Thank you, Dan, for your honesty and help. Greetings from the UK." All right. This is a great question because you know what? I'm 5'9". So, you know, I can relate to this guy. You know, well, we're in the same position. I don't know if I relate to you, bro. But so here's the thing, is that you seem to want to be the perfect male specimen, okay? And you say you're insecure about it. So if you're not the perfect, you know, you want to take steroids and you want to be a different height, okay? You have a desire to be the best, perfect male specimen. And if you are not the perfect, best male specimen, apparently you feel like shit about yourself. You feel like you're no good. You're nothing. You suck. That's not a good mindset. That's the mindset of a beta male, actually. Okay? So why the fuck would you feel that way? Okay? You know, did you decide this on your own? Did you decide that height is the most important thing to you in life? And that's what decides if a man is a good man or a piece of shit? The length of the calcium and the length of his bone matter in his legs is what determines the worth of a man. The length of his leg bones is what determines the value of a man. Society's got you, man. They've convinced you that all this superficial shit that doesn't matter, money, status, pride, expensive clothes, expensive house, how long your legs are, how beautiful your face is. They've convinced you that this is the measure of a man. This is how you measure a man and tell whether or not a man is worthless, a piece of shit, or if he's valuable and awesome. What a sad, sad way to live your life. What a sad way to think. What a sad world to live in, where it's believed that these kinds of factors are what determine the worth of a man, what determine the value of a man. If he has big muscles, if he has the right amount of money in his pocket, if he has the right length to his legs, if he has the right looking face, and all your other qualities, like, are you a guy with honor? Are you a man with integrity? Are you a man that if we were in a war zone together, I could trust you with my life? Are you a man that I would feel proud to be friends with? That I could bring you to my grandpa and grandma's house and I could be proud that you are my friend because of the way that you treat the people around you, because of your morals, because of the things that you stick to no matter what, because of the value system that you have, of the things that you believe are good and the things that you believe are evil, and the things that you will not change under any circumstances, under any amount of bribe, any amount of temptation from worldly sources. Are you the kind of person that is a rock? Are you a man I can depend on? Are you a man with a smart brain? Are you creative? Those aren't what make the value of a man? Well, they are to me. And I don't give a fuck how tall you are. I don't give a fuck how big your muscles are. I don't give a fuck what your body fat percentage is. I don't give a fuck how many inches or millimeters or centimeters your fucking legs are. I don't give a fuck how much money you make. I care about what kind of man you are. I care about, do you have warrior spirit? Are you someone I could trust with my life in a foxhole? Are you a man with morals? Are you a man who would make your grandparents proud of their lineage, proud of their descendants, proud of who you are? Are you a man that can look at yourself in the mirror and that you can know, I'm doing my best in my life. I'm trying to make the world a better place. All right? Because those are the things that I give a care about, okay? I give a fuck about, okay? And so it sounds like you've let the world determine to you what is important in a man, what is important in life. So for me, no, I don't let the world tell me what is important. I am the one who decides what is important. For me, in my life, I decide what are the important qualities in a man. And I decide what means if you're a good man or you're not a good man. No outside sources are going to change that for me. No outside sources or influences. The entire fucking world could come up to me and they could tell me, Dan, these are the things that mean if you're a man or not. And come up to me with all the stupid, prideful, bullshit, worldly shit that doesn't matter anything, that will all be gone the moment you die, and no one will give a fuck about it anymore or give a fuck about you anymore, and say that that's what's important. And if every single person, all fucking 8 billion of them, stood in front of me and said that to me, this is what I'd say. Fuck you. Okay? I decide. I am the one who decides what is important and what is not. I am the one who decides what makes a man. And there's your answer to your insecurities, okay? You now have the mindset of that you have been dominated. You have been dominated. Your brain has been dominated by outside forces. And if you want to be a leader, if you want to be the kind of person, the kind of man that you want to be, you must undominate yourself. That you must make sure that you are no longer dominated. Your brain is no longer dominated by outside sources, and you must become the man who decides what is right for him, what is important to him. Next question. Pete asks, "Hey Dan, Peter from Australia. Love your podcast. Has helped me a great deal. Appreciate the content and honesty, mate. Just curious about this dude on social media, the king of the diet. This guy eats a lot of shit, man. Claiming if you do it the right way, if you eat the shit the right way, you'll never get fat. He looks pretty good, but struggling to believe it all. Surely he's not eating all that shit daily, and it's more for show on camera. Or is it somewhat possible on a shitload of human growth hormone, metformin, and a million other compounds? I'm just curious, as it's quite entertaining from the outside. Come visit Melbourne, Australia sometime, dude, and I'll look after you." Thanks, I appreciate that, man. Got a lot of fans in Australia, a lot of podcast listeners. I've looked at the statistics, and Australia is the second most popular country after the USA for listening to this podcast. And a lot of guys from Australia call me up on the phone, do phone call consults with me. I'm a fan of the Australian guys. I'm a fan. You guys are real down to earth, and I've never had any problems. Mostly everybody is. But, every culture, every country's got their own normal, typical behavior. And I'm a fan of the Australian guys. I like them. So, what do you think, man? It's probably a combination of all of the above. Is this guy, he's probably not eating everything he says on camera. He's probably on a shitload of human growth hormone and metformin and a million other compounds, DNP, whatever. And, he's probably got genetics too to be able to do this. The gist of it is that he's selling a pipe dream. He's selling you what you want to hear, but he's definitely not selling you the real situation for the average person, for the average guy. He's telling you, here's the beautiful life. Here's the beautiful life. If you just pay me, I will tell you how you too can live the beautiful life and be able to have everything you want with no discipline and no hard work, just like me. Well, he can have fun with that. He can have fun with that. You know what? There's no satisfaction in that. There's no satisfaction in that. You get something and you didn't have to work hard for it. You didn't have to have any discipline for it. You just cheated. All right. Well, you might have fun with that for a few days. And then you're going to realize that there was no accomplishment in that. It's just a bunch of empty pride about having something you didn't work for. It's like a rich kid getting a Ferrari on his 16th birthday. You think he really values that thing? Nah. He probably sped in it and probably crashed it first year. Daddy bought it for him. Next question. Daniel asks, "Hi Dan, greetings from Sweden. I started listening to the podcast 2 weeks ago and I'm already on episode 35. Awesome content. Wish I found it a few months earlier. I recently dropped out of my first ever competition due to complications from estrogen that my coach had no idea how to handle. After listening to your podcast, I have been able to troubleshoot and fix the problems. My stack is 30 milligrams D-ball, 100 milligrams Winstrol, 350 milligrams trenbolone acetate. I will now add 350 milligrams Tesprop and 50 milligrams Anadrol. I'm currently on 5 milligrams of letrozole per day since I have an absurd amount of estrogen. He says, if I reduce the D-ball to 10 milligrams, how much letrozole should I be on, do you think? He is 188 centimeters tall and weighs 110 kilograms with 8% body fat. Okay, yeah, so you're taking 5 milligrams or 2 full tablets of letrozole per day. So you're very estrogen sensitive. You produce a lot of estrogen. And, you're going to have to take steroids in a way that works for your body. So taking steroids for your body produces a lot of estrogen. So you're going to have to limit the estrogenic compounds. The first thing that I would change if it was me in your shoes was instead of taking only letrozole, I would combine exemestane with letrozole. So I would take something like maybe 3 or 4 exemestane per week and then continue taking as much letrozole as was needed. The exemestane will bind up and remove the aromatase enzyme from your body. Remove the enzymes that create estrogen from your body. And then whatever enzyme is still remaining in your body, the letrozole will go and bind that up. And so you'll get better estrogen control from the combination of exemestane and letrozole than you will from just letrozole. And a third way that you could even make that stronger would be to add Nolvadex, tamoxifen, 20 milligrams or 40 milligrams even, which is an estrogen receptor blocker to that. So then you'd be hitting it from 3 different angles. All right, so you asked, should you reduce the D-ball to 10 milligrams? Yeah, I mean, you should take out the D-ball, to be honest, man. That's not going to work for you, you know. It's just not a hormone that's working for you. So if it was me, I would take out the D-ball and up the anadrol to 100 milligrams per day, because the anadrol has no estrogen conversion, okay? But just make sure one thing is, because anadrol can, in a minority of people, attach directly to the estrogen receptor and cause gyno. So you can tell if this is happening to you or not by blocking the estrogen receptor by using Nolvadex, okay? And if that isn't, or removing the anadrol, of course, okay? And you can see if that's you or not. But most people do not get estrogenic effects from anadrol. So if I was you, I would take out the D-ball and up the anadrol. And, you know, for you, you're going to be a guy that's always got to use low amounts of aromatizing compounds. So low amounts of testosterone, no D-ball, etc. That's the way that your body has to take steroids. Okay, Grayson asks, hey, Dan, I'm about to go on a beach trip and I want to stand out. I got some free tablets of Dianabol. I've been flat as hell cutting with fat burners, DHTs, and have not the best pump, even with decent carbs. So would a low-dose D-ball pre-workout help look fuller, or would it just cause a watery, bloat, fat look? Well, a low dose of D-ball will help you get fuller, especially if you combine it with Dextrose intra-workout. So during that very insulin-sensitive time of weight training, having the Dextrose on board, and Dextrose produces insulin release, which means that whatever energy is in your bloodstream is going to cross the cell membranes and go into the cells. And then you're also going to be actually pumping the blood full of nutrients, which is going to be full of the dextrose, into the specific muscle that you're training. And the blood that's full of dextrose and that has insulin in it because you ate the dextrose is going to now be concentrated in the muscle that you're training, which is extra sensitive to insulin. So you're going to be able to pump it up with those carbohydrates, directly putting those carbohydrates into that muscle. So if I was you, I would take 100 to 150 grams of dextrose and sip that through the workout. And, you know, the D-bol dose that you'll need in order to make that process be better would be 10 to 20 milligrams of D-bol an hour pre-workout. Or what I think would be better would be 2 tablets of Anadrol an hour or 2 pre-workout. Sandrina asks, hey bro, was just wondering what your thoughts are on drinking Gatorades mid-workout. Would dextrose powder be better? Yeah, so Gatorade is made from sugar or table sugar, which is different from dextrose. Table sugar is a combination of fructose and glucose in 50-50 percentages. The molecule is called sucrose. So fructose is not bioavailable in muscle cells. It cannot be taken by muscle cells as muscle glycogen. And fructose does not stimulate the secretion of insulin. In fact, it blunts insulin sensitivity. So when fructose is consumed, it decreases the sensitivity of your body to the effects of insulin. So it's working against you here in an intra-workout manner, taking regular sugar. It's desensitizing you to insulin and not producing an insulin release, which is what you want. You want to have a big insulin release during the workout, and you want to be very sensitive to insulin during the workout. So you don't want to drink sugar during the workout. You want to drink dextrose or glucose, because sugar is chemical name sucrose, which is a 50-50 combination of glucose and fructose. That's not what you want. So that's the reason why I recommend the Haribo gummy bears, because they're made out of glucose. They're not made out of sugar like other candies. That's the reason why I recommend intra-workout dextrose powder drink, because it's not sugar. It's a clean carb. Dextrose, glucose, clean carbohydrates. They're processed forms of the same carbohydrates that white rice or potatoes, etc., turns into in your body. Starch turns into glucose. Dextrose turns into glucose. So go with the go with the dextrose, bud. All right. And the okay, so he has one more question. Okay, he wants some help, and this will be the last question of the day then. He's also wondering if I could give some feedback on his cycle. He wants to recomposition and build back lost mass and lose some fat. Okay. 500 tests, 20 weeks. 500 Boldenone, 20 weeks. 350 Trenase, final 12 weeks. 50 Anadrol, first and final 8 weeks. Will increase in test and equipoise dosage up as the cycle goes on, looking to reach 750 to 1,000 milligrams or both. Yeah, bro, I think it looks good. So the thing is that you want to recomp. Well, you're going to have to be timing your nutrients. You're going to have to be timing your cardio. You're going to have to be doing things to make your insulin sensitivity as high as possible. You're going to have to be only eating carbs at insulin sensitive times. You're going to have to be avoiding carbs at insulin insensitive times. You're going to have to be taking supplements with your food so that when you eat carbohydrates, you're extra sensitive to insulin, which keeps insulin levels down, which keeps you from having hyperinsulinemia or chronically high insulin levels, which make fat burning not possible. And you're also not going to be able to be eating carbohydrates all throughout the day. You're going to have to be having a diet where some times of the day you eat carbohydrates and other times of the day you do not eat carbohydrates. So that since lipolysis or fat burning can only happen when insulin levels are low in the body, you have those times in your diet. So these are the mistakes that people make with recomposition. All right. That was a great podcast. Great talking to you guys today. As I said, if you'd like, if you got a lot of questions, you got very stimulated from this podcast, go ahead and send me your questions. steroidspodcast@gmail.com. And then if you want to be part of the Dan team, you like my vibe, you want to talk to me, you can also set up a phone call consultation with me or do the 1 month daily text messaging with me. Just hit me up, steroidspodcast@gmail.com. All right. So that's going to be the last question for the podcast today. It was fun talking to you guys, and I'll be coming up with another episode for you guys real soon here. So make sure to go pick up Ultimate Guide to ROIDS, 109-page ebook by Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. You know, if you just go to bodybuilderinthailand.com, it's I think it's the first article on the homepage where you can check it out and read like 20 pages. It's definitely worth it. It's my best content. You know, if you like the podcast, the book will blow you away.